Great Wednesday. Welcome to the Fully Human Connections podcast. I'm your host, King, and I'm joined by my co-host, Reggie. How you doing today, Reggie?
Doing well, King. Always good to see you on Wednesday mornings for a conversation. So looking forward to jumping in.
Same here, same here. And as I'd like to get things started, what's your spiritual energy number?
I'm at a 10. As we were talking just before we got on, I had a big energy because I thought I was going to see a basketball game this afternoon. But it's not until tomorrow, but I still have the energy, so I'm good.
Okay, excellent. And so what's your gratitude moment?
So I'm grateful as always for my indoor plumbing, for my refrigerator with food in it, which is powered by electricity, which provides me with some other advantages that many people on the planet do not have. And I'm just grateful for, I'll even go out there into the world looking at a blue sky today. It's probably going to get into the 50s up here. So it's a good day, even though I'll spend most of it inside. I function better when there's sunshine out there. So just a lot of small things, in addition to having a relatively sound mind, as far as I can tell, and a relatively healthy body. I'm just grateful for some very, very basic things that I will never take for granted.
Excellent. Well, I concur with you. I'm a 10 as well. And my gratitude moment is, of course, being alive, the ability to hear, see, walk, talk, stand, breathe, have a sound mind. Grateful for another 24 hours to pursue my purpose in life, to live my purpose, to be connected with it, to know it as well as being grateful for a mother who's alive, who is of sound mind, who's still of love energy. I can connect with her on that. Still grateful for that. Grateful for a roof over my head. Grateful for the challenges and obstacles in my way, because through those come wisdom. And finally, I'm grateful for an opportunity to connect and build with you today. And again, grateful for committing to 6 weeks of continue to work out, and seeing the benefits of it now, getting up in the morning and getting a walk in as well, all before the show. So that always puts me in the right energy and the right mindset to, number one, to be receptive, for seeds to be planted, and number two, to be also at the frequency of building and connecting, and not living in the ego moment of what I know or what I don't necessarily agree with, and those things. That I realize that for me, at least speaking personally, that if I don't commit to giving myself something, such as to work out, then ego can kick in and creep in much easier when I don't have that, I guess, that wall built up from it. But when I have that wall built up, then I'm not living, I don't find myself thinking and operating under the perspective of ego.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And I'm happy that you're committed to that 6-week program. And in the back of my mind, when I say that to you, it's 6 weeks. Then in parentheses, I say and beyond, because I know you're not going to stop at 6 weeks.
Well,
Not,
yeah, actually, it's 16 weeks. So I'm just in the week 6 of it. But no, I'm
okay.
not. I'm not going to stop at the 6 weeks. This is going to be, as long as I'm physically able. This is the rest of my life.
Yeah. Great.
So, with that being said, we both at a 10. We both feeling gratitude. That's an excellent way to kind of really bring in the energy, talk about being fully human. And with that being said, what do you see as our topic for today?
Yeah. So the topic today is actually, going to be really a current. Everything we've been talking about has been based in current events, but we've looked at some things historically in the context of healing America's narrative. That's what we've been doing for almost 2 years now, and specifically the collective national shadow of the United States, which is characterized by at least 9 traits. And these are the 9 traits that we can prove historically and currently. There might be more than 9, but the evidence for ignorance, arrogance, fear, bigotry, greed, violence, excess, bullying, and untrustworthiness is really clear. And just to be clear for anyone who is new to this podcast, we're not saying that the United States is just that. What we're talking about is the shadow, the collective shadow, in the Jungian sense, where shadow is that part of an individual or of an organization, or in this case, a nation, that the individual, organization, or nation is not aware of. It has been repressed. And if somebody points it out, the individual or the organization or the nation will absolutely deny it. Definitely not true. And so in the last, especially in the last 2 weeks, there's been something that's not new, but it's become more explicit. I'm going to actually read something to kind of kick this off so I get the exact language right. We've been speaking, our conversation is not about Donald Trump, but it includes Donald Trump because he, in my argument, manifests all 9 traits of the collective American shadow. He's ignorant of many things. He's arrogant. He's bigoted. He invokes violence, and he's actually guilty of violence too in terms of sexual assault. He is greedy. He does things to excess. He's a bully, and he's untrustworthy. So, I mean, anybody wants to disagree with any of that, see me in the parking lot, because those things are all pretty easy to say. And lots of people don't acknowledge all that. So I'm not being facetious when I say that. I'm not trying to be cute here. But at an annual event, it was held in Maryland in the last 2 weeks of February of this year, so about 3 weeks ago, the Conservative Political Action Conference, where they invite speakers from all over the country, and in this case, all over the world, and they speak about what the conservative political action folks think is important and what they want to accomplish in the coming year. And they support Donald Trump's presidency. So I want to just read a couple of quotes from the conference and who said them, and a couple of quotes that happened leading up to and right after the conference. And then that'll be our fodder for our conversation. One of the folks who spoke was Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who's pretty much an authoritarian figure in Hungary now, and has hurt the NATO alliance in various ways. And Orban said that Donald Trump as president wouldn't give a penny more to Ukraine, and that's why the war is going to end. And he had a private meeting with Trump in Mar-a-Lago the week before. And so Trump called this Hungarian dictator, effectively, a non-controversial figure because he just says, quote, "This is the way it's going to be," and that's the end of it. He's the boss. He's a great leader, fantastic leader. In Europe and around the world, they respect him. That's actually not true. In Europe, they're afraid of him, and they think he's hurting the democratic process in Europe. So Orban has eliminated rival political parties. He's captured the courts, much as Trump did during his presidency. He's taken over the press, so there is no free press really in Hungary anymore, and some other things. That's one example. So Viktor Orban was a speaker, and he was acknowledged at the American Conservative Political Action Conference. One of the man who basically was the opening speaker at the conference, by the name of Jack, I never know how to say his last name, Posobiec, and he's been on the watch list of this Southern Poverty Law Center for years now as a white supremacist, as somebody who trolls and tries to start political problems, who says things that are provably false. And he began the Conservative Political Action Conference of the United States Conservatives with this quote: "Welcome to the end of democracy. We are here to overthrow it completely. We didn't get all the way there on January 6th, but we will endeavor to get rid of it and replace it with this right here," this meaning the conservative movement. And he got applause for saying that. So there are more, and we can come back to capture some more other leaders of other countries who said things like the cult of woke and its priests in the mainstream press Hollywood, the music industry, and corporate boardrooms are a clear and present danger to our way of life and even our security. All right. He said that woke is just a new form of communism. It's a civilizational threat. All right. So that's, again, the type of language that was being bandied around. Now, my opinion on hearing that is that one of the issues with America's collective shadow is that many Americans are ignorant. And I don't mean that in a deprecatory way. I mean that the world is so complex now, and so many Americans get their news and their information from one source, whether it's moderate, far left, or far right. And this idea that Trump is good for democracy and America and to make it great again is true for a lot of people because they don't know any better. They don't understand the complexity of the history of the country, of what's gone on in the last, I'll say, 50 years especially, and what's going on right now. So there's another Trump presidency would, and this is not just my opinion, these are the scholars and journalists and researchers who I respect, and even some former people who I didn't respect, who were part of the Project for the New American Century, the neoconservative movement back in the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s. They've left the Republican Party and are speaking out against Trump now. So the threat is real. And what this Trump party now, because it's no longer what the Republicans were, is doing is they're conflating language, they're co-opting language, and they're basically doing very successfully what George Orwell warned us about in his book 1984, where up is down, left is right, in is out, and so on. Inside is outside. So they have no respect for or concern with what's literally true. They have an agenda, and they've convinced lots of the people that their agenda is in their best interest, even though Donald Trump's presidency did nothing for poor white people in the middle of the country, many of whom support him. They like the way he talks. They like that he bullies people. They like that he is against immigrants. And they like that he is seems to be a take charge kind of guy. So there's this real upside down movement going on. And didn't just happen this week or last month. It's been going on for a while. But they're saying things, this is the last point I'll make. They're saying things now explicitly, which were going on kind of under the table or behind the explicit language years ago. To say, welcome to the end of democracy, to begin the Conservative Political Action Conference. And we almost succeeded on January 6th, but we didn't get it done. If anyone who considers him, her, or theirself an American citizen who believes in democracy, with all of its messiness and its flaws, isn't concerned by that language, then the rest of us have a lot of reason to be concerned. So I'll put a period there and see what's coming up for you.
Well, again, excellent topic. So gratitude for taking the time to prepare us for conversation today and choosing a topic that's right now in need of urgent discussion and analysis for sure, and keep everybody's frequency tuned in to so they can be aware of. But a lot of things come to mind as I was listening to you from a gamut of things, tying it into what you said the 9 shadow elements are, looking at how that's aligned with the rhetoric that's been spoken at the CPAC meetings, as well as the energy that Trump is able to create around what he has, his agenda. And then, as you say, completely taking over the Republican Party to the point where they won't even though 90% of them disagree with the ones who are truly conservative disagree with a lot of who he is, his behaviors, and his leadership, but his effectiveness of getting the judges on the court, of getting Roe versus Wade turned around. They can live with those trade offs as far as his personality, his criminality, more importantly. But also, what comes to mind as well is just the fact that I'm looking at how, you talked about how Trump presidency hasn't done anything for poor whites across the rural America. You know, the United States really historically hasn't done anything for poor whites, you know, other than give them the false promise or the false narrative that you're better than black folks or you're not a minority and you're an American, right? So I'm gonna give you those things, and they hold on to those to say, okay, we might not financially get the things that we are entitled to, or as citizens, more respectively, the jobs not being created for us, the country's not moving in the direction that's in our best interest. But at the end of the day, we are, at least from a societal level, above these other groups. And our government leaders now are willing to let us know that they're going to look out for us. So they're hearing the rhetoric that they want to hear. And again, when you throw that in and combine it with making sure that they see that the victimization of you're a victim just has been done to you, and if you don't act, then this is what's going to happen. And unfortunately, both sides are really doing that right now. So they're doing it to say the woke movement is the next best thing, as you mentioned, a new form of communism. So be aware that if you don't stand up and fight, then the woke is going to take over. And then, of course, on the other side, the Democratic side, we're being told, well, this is the end of democracy. So if you don't vote, then this is what's going to happen. So it's really interesting just to see how fear and ignorance have been exploited on both sides. Um, now, I guess the scariest thing about it is most people are not doing critical thinking analysis to really look at what's being told to them and really understand what they're hearing opposed to what's really true. They're just saying, okay, that aligns with what my beliefs are. And my beliefs is that I'm scared right now of what's coming into this country. And I'm being fed this information. That information to me is in line with in line with my fears. And I do realize this is happening to me and I need to do something about it. So now with me sharing all of just kind of what's been on my mind and what I received from what you're saying, I throw a question at you. And my question is, from your experience as, I guess 60 plus living in this country, voting for, I believe, over 40 years or maybe definitely over 35 years, and just kind of seeing how this country has changed, what does your gut and experience tell you? Not so much from any political posters or anything like that, but just from your natural sense of understanding of history and just kind of what you see as far as the energy of right now. What are your thoughts? And I know you don't know the answer, but what are your feelings towards who you think is going to possibly win in November?
Yeah, so I love that question. I want to say thanks for just raising that. Traditionally, the country hasn't done a lot for poor white people, not just in the middle of the country, but a lot of places in the Appalachian and West Virginia, different places. So thank you for pointing that out as well. It wasn't just the Donald Trump presidency. But to your question, so I'm going to give you a slightly nuanced answer. So statistically, based on, and again, I'm not doing this, I'm not going to give you a pollster's answer, but I want to just say some things that are true. Over 60% and probably close to 2/3 of Americans disagreed with the Supreme Court's reversal of Roe versus Wade. A large number, I don't know the exact statistic, disagreed with the Shelby versus Holder decision in 2013, which weakened the Voting Rights Act. I won't get into the nuts and bolts of that, but that was in 2013. It allowed the former Confederate states, or any state, more of them, to make it easier for them to change voting laws to disenfranchise selected groups. And just as a statistical truth, they never changed the voting laws to disenfranchise white wealthy people. It was always poor people and or black people, or poor black people. Right. So that's, people can look that up, take my word for it. And there's other examples where the views of the majority of Americans that they do believe in equal rights for women, for people of color, for gays, etc. They really do. I mean, it's clear. So here's the answer. And you and I have touched on this before, if every eligible voter in America registers to vote, so there's nobody who's eligible to register who doesn't register. So they choose to vote, they choose to register, and their local voting district allows them to register and vote. And there are certain states, I mean, right within 24 hours of the Shelby versus Holder decision in 2013, Texas, specific districts in Texas passed laws that made it harder for people to vote within 24 hours of the Supreme Court decision. And then Georgia did, North Carolina did, and other states did. I don't mean to pick on them, but those are the ones that I can remember. I'm pretty sure Connecticut didn't, or New York didn't, as far as I can remember. And I say those two because that's where I've lived most of my life. So if everyone who's eligible to register registers, and everyone who registers votes, Joe Biden wins in a landslide, simply based on the fact that Joe Biden and what he believes in is in alignment with far more people in the United States of America than Donald Trump and what he believes in. Now, having said that, Trump has tens of millions of followers, right? He got 70 some odd million votes in 2020. Biden got, 7 or 8 million votes more. Right? So there was that difference. If everyone votes, Trump can't win. But a lot of people think that voting is a waste of time. Right? And just as an example, so in the 2016 election, where Donald Trump won the Electoral College, he lost the popular vote by just under 3 million votes. But if you look at the breakdown, all right, Trump got in the vicinity of 28 point something % of the popular vote. Clinton got about 29%, like 1 percentage point more. Did not vote, registered but did not vote, got about 33% of the vote. In other words, about 33% of the people didn't vote, and another 7% who were eligible to register Americans didn't vote in the 2016 election. That's a failure of the democratic process, especially for the country that says we're the beacon of democracy and the example for the rest of the world. So my answer is, for the fear on both sides, and I agree that both sides play the fear card, but I don't think that what the Democrats are talking about is a danger to the country. What the Trump party is talking about is a danger to the country, as far as I can see it. That's my opinion. But if everyone votes, or if at least 70% of people vote, which I don't think we've had 70% of people vote in a presidential election in years, if ever. Don't quote me on that because I'm making that number up. I know it's been over 60 on occasion. If 80%, if still 20% of American voters didn't vote, Donald Trump can't win, just based on who believes in what. Convincing people that it's important to vote, and then factoring in And I hate to say it this way because I loved his father and I loved his uncle. But, today or yesterday, Robert Kennedy Jr. was talking about who his vice presidential running mates might be in his campaign. And he spoke about Aaron Rodgers, who has, is a football player and has said some really goofy things out loud in his life. He's a former Green Bay Packer and now an injured New York Jet. And Jesse, I just lost his last name, the wrestler, Ventura, who was the governor in, I think, Minnesota. And he picked them because they kind of agree with his stuff and they have brand recognition.
Right.
Had nothing to do with politics or knowing what's going on. I mean, Ventura at least served, but Rodgers is an athlete millionaire.
But he reads.
Yeah.
I'm saying he states that on these interviews. Like I read a lot, so it's
okay.
because he reads a lot.
Well, good. So you and I are qualified to be vice presidential candidates too, of reading a lot. So someone like. So let's just take one at a time. Cornel West. Anybody who votes for Cornel West, who I have a lot of respect for as a scholar, as an activist for his entire life. I probably agree with him on 99% of the things he says out loud. You vote for Cornel West, you're taking a vote from Biden. You're not taking a vote from Trump. If you vote for Robert Kennedy, it's more of a kind of the Wild West, because some of the people who are anti-vaxxers and who believe in conspiracy theories on the Trump side might see Robert Kennedy because of his name recognition as somebody to vote for. So he might steal votes from both candidates. But even with that, and voting for Marianne Williamson, same thing. And I love her message. And if she had a chance at winning, I would consider voting for her, but she doesn't. And I'm not going to take votes away from Joe Biden because I believe that Donald Trump is dangerous in many ways. So if both sides succeed at getting out the vote, Trump loses significantly. I mean, he lost pretty significantly in 2020. It wasn't a close election compared to close elections historically. 7 or 8 million votes is not close in this country, an election. I mean, a difference between Gore and Bush in 2000 was under 1 million votes. I forget the exact number now. And even with Humphrey, I think it was, there's another one that was really close in my lifetime. I forget which one it is now, so I don't want to say it incorrectly. So that's my long answer to a straightforward question. It depends on who shows up to vote, because the people who just say everybody is doing the same thing, they're all liars. That's a really dangerous perspective to take, because you're saying they're all equal and it doesn't matter. And it does matter. If you want to live in a democracy and you want to continue having something like the more or less, and I don't even like to say this, but I'll say it, post-World War II in this country saw progress in many ways, where more and more people could have good lives, good in quotation marks, improve their lives. In suburbs, in cities. I mean, the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act helped, and other movements helped. If you were gay, you can get married in many states now. Now, again, it was better for white middle-class Americans for sure, but post-World War II, there was a period of about 70, 75 years up until today, 80 years, whatever the numbers are exactly, where there was progress made. And in terms of, getting a job and being able to, have a decent life and raise your kids, that's begun to tank. It really began to tank, in the mid to late 80s with trickle-down economics and the Reagan presidency. and it's gotten increasingly worse for lower middle income people of all skin pigmentations since then. The Trump administration wants to get rid of a majority of federal employees. They want to gut federal assistance programs. So if you need help, you're not going to get it from a Trump administration. He gutted the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control. He took down the I forget the name of the organization, but the government that supports scientific research, the government agency. He took that down from his website, on the White House website, early in his presidency, beginning in 2017 when he took office. He's looking to dismantle a lot. And he's not doing it trying to help middle and lower class Americans. He's doing it to keep the promises he made and continues to make to the people who are helping him get into office. And that was true when he ran in 2016. It was true in 2020 when he lost. He owes a lot of people. And none of those people are particularly progressive, are in a Democratic Party, or believe in science for the most part. So it's a very, very dangerous trajectory that he's on. And people who care about living in a reasonably free and striving to be a more perfect union and move toward real equality for all in this country can't vote for Donald Trump. So you need to vote, because if you don't, he can win. That's I don't have a real strong opinion there.
Well, I can tell you what my concern is.
Yeah.
And listen to people, whether they're on social media, whether they're out in the streets. I would say this, that, and I use this analogy. It's like we're in a house, and the house is going to be destroyed. Now, one person is downstairs, lighting fires and things of that nature, and the other person, who the opponent is saying he's lighting fires, can't give him any more power because he's going to burn the house down. The person who's lighting fires is saying, what other person is, you got the house wide open, the windows and doors, and everybody just running through the house, still and everything. So either way, the house is being destroyed. It's which one you really want to deal with. Now, the people who have been, and this is what I'm hearing, using the analogy, voting just to put the fire out every time, and they've been told, listen, if you don't vote in this election, this is the most important election ever, that the fire is going to consume the house and the house is going to burn down. And these folks have just voted just to avoid the house being burned down, even though they don't like the fact that people are just running in, walking through the house, stealing. There's no locks on anything either, but they just been told, hey, listen, if you don't vote, the house is going to get burned down. And I'm saying that because I liken the Trump administration to the ones that actually setting the fires, right? And Democrats are the ones who are leaving the doors open. And so my point is, with that being said, I think that I'm concerned that Trump could win this time, mainly because the folks who are usually being told to vote just to make sure the fires and the spread in the house doesn't burn down, or to the point where they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And they're like, I no longer can see the benefit in keeping the house from being burned down. If it's going to burn down, let me see how it looks. Let me see what happens with it burning down, because in its current state, I'm not really benefiting from the house as much. And I'm not saying they're right, but I'm saying that's the feeling. That's their thoughts. There's TikTok videos floating around that has come across to my phone as a notification, and friends have referred this video to me as well. And it's a video that has a short clip, and it says there's a question where Kamala Harris has been asked, "So, what do you intend to do for Black folks if you all get reelected?" Her answer is, "Well, we can't just do anything just strictly for Black folks. We had to, I wouldn't be foolish enough to." And I forgot, I'm not quoting her correctly, but she alluded she would be fooled to say we're going to do anything just for Black folks. That's not going to happen. So she was non-committal in with that regards. Even though they say that if 96% of Black people don't vote Democrat, then Republicans will win every time. So if Democrats will get at least 96% of Black people to vote from that particular statistical perspective strategy, then they're going to lose. I'm sure other factors factor in, but I've heard that statistic several times. And my point is, when she answers that question, the next question is they ask that same question to Trump when he's at a conference or he's speaking at where hers is more of an interview style. Trump is actually on stage and he's saying these things to say, here's what I'm willing to do for the Black community. I'm willing to, you know, create more small business loans. I'm willing to help more Blacks in education. I'm willing to, he lays out 3 or 4 things. We call it the platinum plan. I have a platinum plan that I intend to do for Black Americans. Now, folks who know Trump will say, of course, he's lying. This is another thing he's saying just to get in office. You can't really believe him, dismiss that. But by the same token, and this is what I'm saying, that at least if he is lying, just like he lied to the poor whites as well, he hasn't done anything for them, right? You can point to that as evidence. But the fact that he's acknowledging that you exist, I hear you, I see you, and I'm willing to sit here and at least pretend as though I'm looking out for your best interests, can now is landing softer than being told, well, you all should, like Joe Biden said in 2020, he said on a popular Black hip hop show, well, if you don't vote for me, you ain't Black. Right. So it's just assuming and taking for granted that Blacks are going to vote for me just because we're telling you from fear this person is the next Antichrist. He's Hitler on steroids, right? So you definitely better not vote for him because he's going to bring great pain and great suffering and all that. And then the 4 years he was in office, he really didn't do that. So if you're Black, you didn't really see that. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, you didn't get things done in your best interest. The taxes was definitely better for the elite and so on and so forth. And as you said, democracy was definitely on the verge of, on the verge of being destroyed with January 6th. You can point to those things, but see, what I'm just laying out to you as far as the Black perspective that I've been hearing is that they never felt part of the democratic process to begin with. Yeah, I can vote, but I don't see a difference. It's not improve my community. I'm not benefiting from the voting. I've been told that I have the right to vote, but I don't see the difference. And so that's kind of what makes me concerned. It's like those things and they could be very well true. It's like crying wolf. It's like I've heard that for the last, 12 elections that this is the most important election. And every election is going to be told that, it's always going to be, this is the more important election. I don't believe that's just rhetoric. I believe that's true. But I'm just saying that you got folks who are sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's the scary part. I don't think that Biden can take for credit or granted, I'm sorry, that I have the Black vote this time no matter what. So I don't need to worry about trying to come up with some kind of policy or legislative agenda for them. I can just take it for granted that they're not stupid enough to vote for Trump just because he's racist. It's like all the folks who label Trump as a racist, I've seen racists in my life. Most people who are 50 years or older, they've seen racists. Racists don't have agendas for Black people, at least not positive, or they don't even pretend to say I'm going to do anything for Black people. They just come out. George Wallace, when he was not allowing folks to go to school, he didn't pretend to say, well, it's a better school down the street, and I just don't want you to go to my school. No, I'm not letting you go to my school ever. He made the statement, as long as I'm alive, or some quote he made. Yeah. But anyway, that's the point I'm getting at, is that that's the atmosphere and the energy I'm saying. And with Biden not being able to change student loan debt, And again, I know Congress didn't support him, but see, I think some of those things he knew that Congress wouldn't support him anyway. I think that's one of those I'm going to help end homelessness type initiatives. I can say it. It sounds great. Everybody, wants to. It feels good to hear that statement, and you should believe in me, a person who wants to end homelessness. But I know at the time that politically, I don't have the clout. The government can't end homelessness, but I'm gonna say it because that's what people want to hear. I'm gonna increase minimum wage to $20 an hour. I'm gonna make those feel good type statements. And when you really think about it, if you're a business owner, you don't want to pay someone $20 an hour who doesn't bring you any value at all. That's the minimum I can pay this new employee who can't do anything for me right now because they don't know their position. I got to train them for the next 6 weeks. And I got to pay this person $20 an hour. So that means instantly I got to hire someone overseas using the internet. So I'm not going to even hire any Americans because I can't afford to. First of all, second of all, um, why would I do that when this person hasn't brought any value at all? So those things that sound good hasn't really been thought through, and that's why they're never really going to be implemented. And again, finally, I conclude with this, as Dr. Thomas Sowell says. And again, I'm a person that don't believe in throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Mm-hmm.
To me, there's no man I've ever read about or seen that I agree with 100% of who this person is. Right? As much as I love Malcolm X and I love some of the things he stood for, it's a lot of disagreement I had with Malcolm X about some things, personally, behavior wise, things that I believe he shouldn't have done. And that's what I believe about Thomas Sowell. So I can quote him without saying I believe everything he's written and I'm a full supporter of him, is why I'm laying out the context. But again, he talks about the fact that there's always trade offs and always consequences. There's nothing you can really create as far as understanding Thomas Sowell was an economist that understood the numbers and how the economy works. There's nothing you can do programmatically that you can do that's not going to have trade-off and consequences no matter what it is. It's just a matter if can you identify what those are or you're willing to accept what those are. And finally, you and I both said for years that the systems that we have in place are built for right rich men. And the gatekeepers of those systems are the poor whites who don't have anything, and that's the issue. They're the ones the gatekeepers that's willing to bring violence, that's willing to bring action to keep those systems in place. And I just don't see those systems changing anytime soon. And I just don't see that feel people are excited to get out and vote. So either it's gonna be less turnout than it's been in the previous elections, or a lot of people are gonna be, well, if Trump is gonna bring it down, let's just bring it down. And be ignorant to the true impact of what that behavior is gonna do. Like they really haven't thought it through, but it just that initial emotion is, well, let's just bring it down. Let's just burn it down. If it's going to be burnt down, let's burn it down. And there might be years and years of regret after that, but I'm just saying that's the environment I'm saying.
Yeah, well, it says a lot there. So thank you for that. There's two things I wanted to just point to. I'm going to say it's not the least important one, but it's the one I can say least about. I'll just say it first so I don't forget about it. There are two authors. One is definitely a Harvard professor, and I don't remember either of their names. And they just come out with a new book. Their previous book was called How Democracies Fail. And they studied democratic nations in Europe and South America. They look at the United States some years ago, and they just saw, what were the things that led up to an eventual failure of what was a democratic state. And so that's one. So they wrote that because they saw the beginnings of it in the United States. And I forget what year that book came out. Their more recent book, which is, I know, within this year, if I'm not mistaken, just came out, is called The Tyranny of the Minority. And that takes a close look at how it's possible for a minority of people, which is the extreme right view in this country, it's not a majority of the people, to get control of the courts, can get control of the Congress, is basically what's happening now. And what they do, though, is they argue, and it's not about the founding fathers, but it's the idea that we hold the Constitution to be a sacred document, as opposed to being a document that was brilliant and ahead of its time at the time it was written, which was in the 18th century. This is now the 21st century. So they basically make the argument that there's a vested interest that certain people have in not amending that thing. And it should be difficult to amend. So I just want to put that out there, because that's definitely at play here. The Constitution of the United States and the earliest amendments to it, many of which are important and shouldn't be touched at all, were written by and for white landowning educated men. And we know that. Anybody that denies that is making believe. And, the 13th Amendment worked to shift some of that. The 14th did, the 15th did, the 19th did, and others. But it's got to be shifted. They were talking about the right to bear arms when there were single shot muskets that took like 90 seconds to reload.
Right.
And now you can unleash 150 rounds in under a minute. Well, I don't know the exact numbers for automatic weapons, but so that's one. So the idea that the founding documents need to be updated, and that's not going to happen in a week or a month or even in a generation probably, but I think that's real. The second thing, going back to the house on fire, which I loved your analogy there, I want to expand that slightly and look at the neighborhood in which the house exists. And I'm going to make that analogy because the United States, as powerful as it's been from the middle of the 20th century through the beginning of the 21st century, in terms of military and wealth, unequal wealth, not evenly distributed, but a lot of wealth and power. The neighborhood that they play in, that this country plays in post World War II, was called NATO. And it was primarily because the Europeans knew what war felt like. The Americans did, if you were on Pearl Harbor, in 1941. But in terms of, and God bless all of the Americans who came together to change manufacturing and build what we needed to build to go and fight on two fronts. So we're not negating that. But Europe was razed. France, Great Britain. I mean, the cities and countries were demolished. Civilians were slaughtered. So they knew what that was like. And so they recognize now the Soviet Union, which no longer exists, but Russia is still there. And so they got together, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which basically said, if you try to hurt one of us, we're all going to respond because we're going to take care of our neighborhood, which is basically Western democratic capitalist nations for the most part. That's a brief, oversimplification, but it carries it. What's happening in the neighborhood now, as the house that you're describing is burning, and as the other people are running through and just taking stuff and everything, is that there are other people in the neighborhood who want to dissociate the neighborhood. In other words, we don't want to protect each other anymore. And the best example of that is the hesitation of what to do as Russia, through Putin, tries to access or annex parts of Ukraine. And there are people like the guy Orban from Hungary would like to see Putin do that, to succeed. And Trump doesn't really care. He'll side with whatever is best for him personally. We know that. I mean, we just know that. The whole thing with TikTok now, and I don't want to get into the TikTok thing, but basically, as the house is burning, and I agree with the analogy, and who wants to burn it down, and who doesn't want to burn it down, but is kind of leaving the doors open and letting people run through it, in many ways. I would argue, not against your analogy, but that the entire neighborhood that kept relative peace for the better part of 75 years post World War II. Now, there were never superpower wars. There was nothing like World War II. There were surrogate wars. The United States was responsible for starting several of them, and Russia was responsible for starting several of them. Right? But the NATO alliance and interestingly, the global market, where there were these linear supply chains that all of the countries relied on to get their goods and services produced and so they can consume them, including China and Russia and all of Europe and North America. And we learned that during the COVID pandemic, that the supply chains, certain things we can't do now because of COVID. And a lot of things that we took for granted, not just us, but all of the countries, we couldn't get. But anybody who drives a car, has a smartphone, or uses a computer, you rely on linear supply chains, and they can be disrupted really easy by war. So all that to say, we can't, we're speaking primarily about the United States, but this country does not exist in a vacuum. And Trump will go to the highest bidder because he wants to be president, and he'll do whatever the people who support him financially want him to do. He didn't care about Roe v. Wade.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything, if you look at him historically, he leaned moderate left in his, other than wanting tax breaks and fighting against Native American casinos because he wanted to build more casinos. He wasn't far to the right in almost anything, but that's who funded him for his presidency. So all of that to say, at stake is our house for sure, and whether we close the windows and at least put locks on the doors, we allow it to burn down. But also, if it burns down, there's a good chance the neighborhood or other houses in the neighborhood are going to go with it. And we fought 2 world wars against fascism and authoritarianism in order to prevent that type of behavior. And inviting it back in, knowing what Mussolini did, what Hitler did, what Stalin did, welcoming the authoritarian figures back in, saying, well, maybe they'll be better this time, I think is a really dangerous move. So there's this bigger picture, and the point being, the Constitution needs to be updated. That's not a fast thing. It's not going to happen this year, or even in 5 or 10 years, probably. Hope I'm wrong about that. But the neighborhood is important as well.
Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement with you in that context, and that's what I said. I don't necessarily agree with that thought, but I'm just saying that that's the energy I'm saying. And I use another quick analogy to make this point. It's kind of like in the inner cities, they say there's food deserts, and there are, especially particularly in Baltimore City. But then I know a black gentleman businessman who owned several funeral homes, made a lot of money in the funeral homes in the community. He saw the problem, so he took he bought a property, he opened up a co-op store, brought fresh fruit and vegetables into the community didn't buy it. Folks started stealing from the store. Employees would steal. Eventually, within 2 years, he's out of business. Store is gone. And I said it to say this point, that we can, if you are a person who's politically aware, such as yourself, and you're astute to understand history as well as what's going on politically right now, then I liken that to eating healthy. You said, okay, well, I know I need to eat healthy. I know I need to exercise. I'm going to drink plenty of water. And you're willing to pay $1 for a bottle of water where Mountain Dew is 65 cents. But there's people who are in survival mode who are not thinking the same way, or it's because they're in survival mode, they're more frugal with their finances. And so 65 cents for a soda that actually is going to taste better than this water, which I can buy for $1, I'm going to buy this sugary drink, even though I know it's bad for me. Even though I know you're telling me it's going to give me this, it's going to raise my blood sugar. It's going to give me, all kind of other health issues going to come from it. But in this moment right now, it's going to give me some pleasure, right? And I think that's where so many people are right now, is that they're in the immediate thought of right now. In the
Yeah.
immediate thought of right now, I can't see 2 weeks, let alone 2 years, 4 years down the road, and see the fascism take over the world. To your point of what you're saying, and I definitely believe that's the case, and that's really the global fight we're dealing with. And my only point is one other quick little point on this. Look at someone like Biden. With again, I talk to folks who just from a very simple level, not a very deep introspective analysis, but I can look at when Trump was in office. I got PPP money. I went to fill out a 5 level application online. I got money in my bank account in 2 days. Under Armour got $750 million, right? They got money from the government in order for them to, they didn't even ask for it, but just got it. So my point I'm going with this is this. The government says, okay, we can forgive Under Armour's money. We willing to let that money just go because they're a corporation. But Biden administration came in and created an office particularly for going after folks who try to rob the system for the PPE money. And it's mostly folks who got $2 million or less. And they're actually going after them vigorously with jail sentencing and criminal charges. And it's like these people got $2 million, bought some cars, didn't use the money properly. But Under Armour gets $750 million and they get a chance to just get that money waived. They just don't have to worry about paying any of that back. And you're gonna go after the person who got $2 million. Yeah, that was a criminal act, but I didn't elect you for you to create this office and make that your priority. It's like who asked you to come in and be an aggressive, heavy-handed? And so those are just some of the things, like I said, that to me, it's like, now I'm not saying I'm not going to vote for Biden. I'm going to vote for Trump. I'm not making that point, but I am saying that it's definitely, I'm getting close to that line where it's it's muddy. It's muddy, right? So I only wanted to make that point. And that's why I think we are. And to your point about the House, unfortunately, most people are not going to be that who are living, surviving day to day, whether they're poor whites or poor blacks. At least the poor whites have been told by Trump, "I got something for you. Follow me." Even though, like I said, we know that's a bait and switch. They're not going to get anything at all. They never gotten anything, so it's not going to change. But at least they're being acknowledged for that, for their vote. And I'm just saying that that's, unless Biden comes up some kind of political strategy, I don't see him winning personally. Again, I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong, and I will come on, November 24th and tell everybody I was absolutely wrong, and I'm glad I am wrong. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the environment I see. So I just wanted to share that real quick. I know we reached the top of the hour, so right now we want to come with solutions. So what do you see as some ways that people can take some progressive action to?
Yeah. So because of the scope of today's conversation, I'm just going to kind of narrow it down and go back to speaking about development, where our shorthand has been, it's all about me. That's one way to look at the world. It's about me and my groups, or it's us centric or group centric. Developed beyond that, more inclusive. It's about all of us, meaning all human beings, really having a reverence for the life of all human beings. And then a fourth level, this is again is a shorthand that we're using that's based on real developmental research. It's about everything. So I care about the planet, I care about human beings, I care about dogs and cattle and rabbits and worms and oak trees. Very, very few human beings live at that last one. I would suggest to anybody who listens to this and is especially if you're not sure who to vote for, but even if you are, just get a sense of every day when you get up, what's the center of gravity? What's the basic way you walk through your life? Is it just to take care of yourself and what you want, which would be me-centric? Is it just to be aware of and take care of specific groups? And we have more than one group. So you have your family, your religion, your political party, your community, your team at work, whatever. So there's not just one group. We have multiple groups. Or are you really tuned into your shared humanity? That, a Russian soldier, a Ukrainian soldier, a member of the other political party, they're all human beings. Man, woman, gay, straight, etc. They're all human beings, and you really do care deeply about them. Even when you disagree with them, you understand that they were little babies once, and they grew up, and they ended up where they are, and you ended up where you are. But the connection is really all of us. Because I believe, and I say this often, my bias is development. I believe that based on your developmental worldview, you're going to make choices about how you feel about the us versus them stuff. And just as an example, King, and the last thing I'll say, because I know a little bit over, I mean, in our conversations, you and I both look at the various us's and the various thems and how they attack each other. So we're able to, not that we don't have any of our own groups that we care about, but we're able to step back and say, oh, look, there it is again. I think we both do care about human beings. At some level, that's the experience that I get in talking with you. But I would suggest that people do that and be honest with yourself. Don't say, oh, I love the earthworms and the wasps and the ticks and the mosquitoes, because nobody loves the ticks and mosquitoes, man. That's a lie. But where do you really fall there? And just say, okay, what's healthy about where I am and what's unhealthy about it? How could I be more loving and more embracing of more people, or more of the universe, or more of creation, whatever your language is? And then who are the people who want to exclude others? And who are the people that want to include more others? And which one of those groups do I want to belong in? That would be my suggestion for moving forward.
Well, thank you for that. Definitely, I think wise words, and I think it's, again, we want to make sure people leave our conversation with something tangible that you can go out and implement. And I think those are wise words that people can implement. Now we shift into our final set, or our final section, and that is people who we believe who are either exhibiting fully human characteristics or has exhibited those in the past. And I'll just start by saying that the person I want to pick this particular time is Napoleon Hill. I don't know if I said Napoleon Hill before, but he's fresh to mind, because your point about development, personal development, I look at, he's, to me, the father of personal development and personal growth. And just looking at his life as a man who's given a choice to say, you either write this book by Andrew Carnegie, you either write this book and I can make these connections for you, I'm not going to pay you any money, and it might take you 30 years to finish this book, or you can just leave and take your skills and talents and, of course, get you another assignment, get another job, and look out for your family. And he chose to say, I'm going to become a master of personal growth to teach others. For the benefit of teaching others, his whole life is dedicated to that. To the point, here we are still talking about him to this day. And he's always someone who, anytime I'm feeling confused or I just need to figure out what true north is again, so to speak, I can read the Think and Grow Rich, or the 17 Laws of Success, and get righted and feel good about myself. And I want to give him, of course, it's so much more I can say, but in a short period of time, I just want to give him those flowers and shout out him as an example of someone who lived to be fully human.
Yeah, beautiful. I have Think and Grow Rich on my bookshelf. I think that's the only one of his I haven't. I haven't looked at it in years, so thank you for that reminder. I'm going to go. I think I may have said this person before, but I'll say it again. So my congresswoman's name is Johanna Hayes. She's in the 5th congressional district here in Connecticut. And she was, several years ago, she was the Connecticut State Teacher of the Year. And then she actually won the National Teacher of the Year award. She was a high school teacher in Waterbury, city of Waterbury, which is about 2 miles south of me. And she basically, I'm on her, I get her weekly newsletter. And unlike many members of Congress, she doesn't walk around with her cell phone taking selfies and talking into it and tweeting a lot of things. I think she has a Twitter account. I don't really pay attention to Twitter accounts. But she goes to work every day and she takes care of the people in her district and she stays in touch and she shows what she was able to get done, what she wasn't able to get done, what she's trying to do. And she's just, for me, she's a model of what it is I elect a representative to Congress for. She's not performing in front of cameras and stuff. She occasionally does interviews and things, but she's just a model of being kind of grounded. She's an African-American woman. Her husband is a detective in the Waterbury Police Department. And when she was running for her second term, the Republican candidate tried to, this is the kind of stuff they have to deal with, tried to characterize her as somebody who wanted to defund the police and was against the police. All that stuff. Her husband was a detective in a relatively medium-sized city. So there's crime and stuff. It's not like some city that he's, not doing anything. So she kind of embodies, I would say that fully human piece where she goes to work, she does her job. She did it as a teacher. She's doing it as a congresswoman now. And she's not grandstanding. She's just doing the job. And I tell you, if every American just did that, if all of us just did what we were supposed to be doing, we'd probably resolve a lot of issues. So that's Johanna Hayes.
Absolutely. I'm going to look her up. Thank you definitely for sharing that.
Yeah.
And again, forgive us for going over a little bit. A lot of information we had to get out. Again, these issues that we're discussing are extremely important. But as we wrap the show up, I want everyone to remember the end of the day, the goal is to become fully human, meaning that we're going to grow, be growth minded, looking at ways that we can be better people and looking to learn. And I share this with you real quick and I wrap up. I was out doing my walk and I came across a white older gentleman and we coming across each other's path. He has a little dog. Now, my goal of being more fully human, my old me would have been, there's a white man. He probably doesn't like black people. I'm not going to speak. I'm just going to stay focused and walk right past him. But in my path to become more fully human, I saw he had a dog. So that's an entry fee or entryway. Hey, how old is your dog? So I was able to pick up the energy of the dog. The dog was kind of old, 13. And of course, he started telling me about his dog. So my point is that led to a brief conversation with him and I. And of course, I complimented him on his dog and he smiled and he went on his way. Yeah. And to me, to become more fully human, that's if we did more of that, just look for the commonality that we have as we see each other and speak, smile, the day would go much better. And we can begin to slowly start changing each other's minds about folks who we may not necessarily know as a group and look at them as human beings. So just want to add that part to it.
Yep. So, thank you for that.
Thank you again, Reggie, for choosing another wonderful topic, for being the person you are, for exhibiting the fully human characteristics and behavior qualities. And listening audience, thank you all for listening to today's show. Every Wednesday at 10 a.m., we're here discussing how to become more fully human. And until next week, let's all look for ways that we can all strive to become more fully human. Thank you.